my name is Andrea Lorenz, and this is my Change Quality Management Project presentation. For my presentation, I chose the clinical site Adolescent Inpatient Crisis Stabilization Center. So basically, anybody below the age of 18 comes there on that 5150, either dangerous to themselves or others, and it's the facility's job to kind of stabilize and decide what's the best method to assist the adolescent. I chose to use the issue of physical and chemical restraints and decreasing them as my management project presentation. So issue identification. At the facility, the current occurrence of restraints, chemical and or physical, is about 2 times per week. That's according to the records kept by the facility. So I did some pre-interviews with nurses about their thoughts and feelings on the restraints happening at the clinic. And about 100% of nurses indicated that they would like to see a decrease in restraints. And when asked why, I found a common theme for about half of them that fear and apprehension regarding the restraint was kind of their biggest issue, I guess. And it mostly centered around when to call a restraint or when not to call a restraint. So basically, when to initiate. And also, there is some fear related to confusion over the exact protocol. Again, when and when not to call. Calling too soon or too late. So they felt like maybe if I call it right now, it's not appropriate, or if I wait too long, someone's gonna get hurt. Those kinds of concerns. And poor communication was indicated by a lot of individuals kind of on what their role was throughout the restraint, and a need to kind of have these concrete roles so as to diminish the concern over all this stuff. I also found that about half the interviewees were not fully confident with their de-escalation techniques and felt that they could utilize more training and practice. So even before they got to the need of the restraint, they were feeling kind of not confident in how to de-escalate the patient without going into a restraint. So an article given by the NSW vowed to implement some mental health care review findings, basically saying that they were going to decrease restraints, and found some information in there that was saying that that actually a lot of the reasons why mental health workers end up utilizing restraints when they weren't necessary is because of a shortage of experienced mental health workers, inadequate oversight, and leadership issues, which I kind of find tie into, they're very broad terms, but tie into the interviews that I did with the nurses, because they felt that they didn't have the skills necessary for de-escalation, which you could equate as experience, as well as leadership issues. So the assignment of roles of who does what during restraint, and as well as inadequate oversight. So I definitely think that that can kind of apply to not knowing your patients well, not being informed, and having questions or fear or doubt about your restraint. So quality standard, the mental health commission's rules and regulations regarding restraints say that they may only be used when a patient is an imminent threat to themselves or others, and after all other measures have been exhausted. Basically, what this means is that you've tried everything that you can, and this patient is going to very, very much hurt themselves or somebody else. And actually, the burden of proof on that is pretty hard. Just because a patient is aggressive or violent or threatening, or a numerous amount of unappealing qualities, excuse me, that was my kid, does not mean that they are qualified for a restraint. They have to actually be hurting themselves or going to hurt somebody else before it's appropriate to apply a restraint to a person. Again, the Mental Health Commission's rules and regulations, as well as law, states that all restraints must be initiated by a registered nurse. They must have a physician's order, and again, meet all the criteria as mentioned above. At this current clinic, they're using trauma-informed care, which basically utilizes the two aforementioned bullets, but also it's that you're utilizing preventative measures, including awareness about the patient's trauma. So you take into consideration why the patient is there with you, what has happened to them in their life, what are the unique factors about them that either escalate or de-escalate them, and you have a a strong recommendation to include those in all forms of your therapeutic care. Another article stated that secondary prevention activities actually addressed the outbursts of conflict and aggression even more so than restraints did. So if anybody's ever been in a restraint, we know that patients as well as staff become escalated during them, and it kind of initiates even worse aggression and violence. But utilizing these secondary preventions or your de-escalation techniques has a better chance of working for the patient. So quality variance, the expected outcome is that, again, like we mentioned on the previous slide, physical and chemical restraints will be used as the last resort and only when the patient adequately meets criteria for a restraint. The staff at the clinic will use trauma-informed care and de-escalation techniques prior to any restraint. The patient will be placed in a restraint for the least amount of time as possible. That is the law, as well as the standard operating procedure of the clinic. Patients' vital signs, mental status, and physiological needs will be assessed often and met. Again, the law, as well as the procedure and protocol for the clinic. The current goal actually for the clinic is that all events, so any escalations of a client, will result in de-escalation without the use of restraint. However, for this project, decreasing the restraints by an average of 2 per month was my personal goal. Quality variance. So currently the facility has an average of 8 chemical or physical restraints per month. So the root cause analysis. I utilized different observation as well as my interviews with the other nurses to kind of figure out some of what the problems were and applied it to the research that I found as well. So an improper pre and post shift meeting regarding strategies and approach on how to handle escalated patients. So there is a shift change report happening like between night and day shift, obviously giving them the information regarding the patients, but there isn't necessarily a shift meeting happening within the shift that is coming on together where they can assign duties and talk about the patients and help each other kind of figure out the best way to handle an event if it occurs. Another root cause analysis was that fear related to our newer staff. So there was an article that I cited that said that actually a lot of mental health workers are recruited as new staff with very little training or experience. And we have many first-time nurses at our clinic. So during the interview, they expressed a lack of confidence on when or if to initiate a restraint, as well as they didn't feel confident in their de-escalation techniques. Another thing I found was individual approach variances. So the fact that I might approach an escalated client much differently than somebody else would can actually cause a lot of strain for that gray area because nobody knows who's right or what's doing the right thing. So there was a definite need to kind of like set in stone exactly what the order of events are. With mental health, though, you have to be flexible. Different situations call for different things, but it's always good to have a protocol set in place. Lastly, something that I noticed that wasn't actually indicated by any of the nurses during the interview or by the management staff was an overall sense of disorder during events. So increased volume and stress throughout the restraint, which actually can increase duration and intensity of the events and or restraint. It's really important to remember that all people involved in restraint are human. So absolutely, the restraint is most traumatic to the patient who's being restrained, but it is also traumatic to the other patients on the unit as well as the staff who is doing it. Scope and solution, as well as some information about why these scopes and solutions were chosen. So what we chose to do was to implement pre-shift report, mini sort of shift meeting discussing between patients that we currently had on the unit, possible triggers and behaviors, as well as way to decrease stimuli and improve our chances of not having an event on the unit, as well as to clearly define patient assignments and what to do in case of an escalated patient. So deciding who's going to call the doctor, who's going to be in charge of calling the restraint, who's going to be sent in to de-escalate, all that sort of thing, as well as just going over how to prevent it. We also decided that reminding and placing importance on post-event debriefing to go over the areas of success and improvement was really, really important. So after an event, in the case of just an escalated patient or a restraint of any kind, it is important that as soon as everybody is safe and secure and the unit is back to, baseline, that you have a formal debriefing. The article I cited here said that looking at the formal debriefing, this is where you can kind of identify what went wrong, what could have been done differently, and how to avoid similar incidences in the future. And then as well, a third thing that I felt would be helpful in decreasing the amount of, restraints was implementing a monthly trauma-informed care review. So we already have a monthly meeting that's set in place to go over kind of new stuff. But I thought that it would be incredibly important for the people, especially in the interviews, who stated that they weren't confident in their de-escalation techniques, that they could pick 1 or 2 topics every month and go over them as far as trauma-informed care. Solution implementation. So these were the solutions we went with. So during the monthly staff meeting, right before the 4-week period start, it was announced that we would incorporate addition to our pre-shift report, which was including that sort of mini intra-shift report going over assigned duties and all of that. So nurses are always required to sign in for their shift, but now next to the sign-in box, they check that they participated in the pre-shift report. Also, again, during the staff meeting, the topic of trauma-informed care, specifically therapeutic de-escalation techniques, was reviewed. They went over examples of speaking in a low, calm voice, addressing the patient as what they may or may not need to help them de-escalate, and how to help them calm down, offering food, drinks, or spend time in the outdoor area, as well as other de-escalation activities such as puzzles, coloring, games, that kind of stuff. So analysis. At the end of the 4-week period, a questionnaire was provided regarding the pre-shift report. Some of the questions on the questionnaire include, did your shifts actually implement the new format for the pre-shift report, and how often did that happen? Did you find it positively affected your feelings regarding restraints or not? And were there any suggestions? And then lastly, would they like to continue the new format? So overall, actually 80% of the staff filled out the questionnaires, which was good. I was worried about getting people to actually fill it out. And about 75% of them felt that the new format was helpful in assigning duties and covering information in the case of an event. They did say they would like to continue, most of them. There also were some suggestions about maybe having permanent assignments per shift, that way to minimize time during report and decrease like personality or arguments or opinions during like assigning of shifts. And the data that was collected on the restraints after the 4-week time was that we had a successful response to the project. There were only 6 restraints in the 4-week period that the project was ongoing, which was the decrease of 2 restraints below average that we were looking for. So continuing forward, the facility has stated that they will continue the monthly meeting coverage of de-escalation techniques and restraint review, and they will also continue the new format for the pre-shift review. However, they may make some adjustments based off of what everybody's suggestions were. So these are the references that I used to help come up with my project, and as well as come up with solutions and techniques. Thank you so much.